Dr. Roggenbaum is a mother of 2 children, Laura and Andrew. She is married to Doug Roggenbaum. So let's welcome to the stage my girlfriend, Dr. Jayanne Roggenbaum. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Stephanie. And, you know, as I was sitting out there listening to Lulu, I thought about the fact that God just brings everyone together in such unique ways, doesn't he? And he makes everything fit together in our lives in precious ways. And so, you know, as I was thinking about this leading up to today, I was thinking about Stephanie, and I think it's fitting if we just thank her today for everything that she did to bring this together, because and I'm sure she'll be thanked later, but to have such a group of women here to share today is just wonderful. I know it's been just good for my heart, so thank you, Stephanie. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I say is the most precious part of our lives. The most precious part of my life, and maybe your life too, are my children. And I know that not everyone has children here, but you do have nieces, you have nephews, you have close friends who have children, and maybe your children are grown. So you have grandchildren, or maybe you have young adults. Many of us were talking today about our young adults. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the resiliency of children. And I just wanted to start by saying that we often think that if we just pave the way and make things easy for our children and for our grandchildren, that life will be perfect for them. And we know really that it won't. And so it's finding ways to navigate with our kids, understanding that we can point them to the Lord as they go along in their lives. But we need to know what they're facing. And so in leading up today, I talked to some moms. It's been the joy of my professional career to work with both children and especially with families. And so I talked to some moms and I said, what is it that would be helpful for people to hear? And what they said to me was, and it might not be a surprise to you, how is the pandemic affecting children? And so we're going to talk today about anxieties in children, and then the profile of what makes a child resilient. Lulu actually said a few things that we'll discuss in a few minutes. What are the protective factors to promote resilience? And then practical suggestions. So I want to start by saying this. I want you to hold in your thought 2 people's names. They're super important, Daddy Guy and Barbie. Daddy Guy and Barbie, I'm going to talk about them in a few minutes. So what are the anxieties that children are facing? So the first one up here is school. So some of you are teachers, and you know that the last really just normal school year was not this year. It wasn't last year. It was kind of the year before at the beginning because of what was happening with the pandemic. So children are always anxious about school. They're always concerned about peer pressure, about relationships. But now they've had to worry about what's school going to look like. And you know, the proverbial, do I have to wear a mask, not wear a mask? Am I going to be quarantined or not? How do I know? I don't always know. My parents don't always know. So we used to have predictable kinds of things that happened in schools, and it's changed over the last couple of years. And so what's been normal for them and their experience has changed. So coming out of the pandemic, which we believe that we are, we know that children are still worrying a little bit about what's going to happen next. So that's the first anxiety that I've seen, is worrying about school. Friendships have taken on, and these are actually pictures of my son when he was little, and then just recently in middle school, and then some other just children there. But friendships have been important. And so when I look at those pictures, I see friendships that he had from the time he was little, and then these children were apart from each other for quite some time, came back together, and again didn't know how they were going to be able to get through. So the distance of time and not being able to be as connected has really affected kids. If we're honest, it was lonely for us too, wasn't it? It was lonely for our young adult children as well. So it's not just little children, but all the way through high school and into young adulthood, and really for us as well, that friendships have taken on a different look. And so kids are struggling with that. And learning to be a good friend is incredibly difficult and important to teach our children. So children are worried about those friendships and how to continue to make them and maintain them. Another fear and another anxiety, I should say, that children are experiencing today is the fear of failing. So what do I mean by that? So sometimes in society, we give children and young adults sort of a bad rap, if you will, in that we think they don't have a desire to do well, or we say their work ethic is not as strong as ours, and that's just not really true. What I see are that children really have a fear of failing, and they want to do super well. They want to please us as adults. They want to please their teachers like Karen Kellogg. So it's important that we praise our children for their work and their successes, but help them bear in mind that the most precious part is that they are children of the Lord and that they don't have to be fearful about moving forward. There's another fear that I see that goes with the fear of failing, in that young people, so young adults, the world has changed, right? So they are concerned about, well, quite honestly, probably some of us are too, what's going to happen with Russia and the Ukraine? What's happening? I can't pay my bills. I'm 22. I can't pay my bills because I have to buy gas and it's very expensive. How am I going to be successful in the world today? So that fear of failure is real, not just for a third grader wanting to get an A on the math test, but the fear of failing as launching into adulthood for our young people, our young adults, is very real. So then the next one, the picture up here, when it says family dynamics, it suggests that there is anxiety related just to what happens when a mom and dad maybe don't get along. And that's a little bit of a misnomer. I will say that the current statistic is that 33% of marriages fail, and unfortunately we know that among us as Christians, that's indistinguishable in terms of the fact that that's both non-Christians and Christians. Many marriages fail, we know that. But it's not just about the marriage situation where kids can have some anxieties. There's anxieties related to financial pressure. Perhaps there's mental illness. Lulu talked about mental illness among adults. There's mental illness in the home. A mom or a dad has mental illness. That creates anxiety in children. So it's not just because a mom and dad aren't getting along that a child can have a sense of anxiety with the home. There are blended families that creates anxiety, but it's helping our children come together with us, really in honest prayer and navigation through these times that helps them. And we're going to talk about what makes them resilient. This one's a big topic. I spend quite a bit of time talking to parents about social media. Now, if you know what all of those symbols mean, you'll have to tell me what some of them mean, because I don't know what all of them mean. But certainly we know the one, the second row down, the Snapchat symbol. Has anyone seen that in your house? So Snapchat, Facebook, that's kind of us. Kik is not a really great one either. Do you remember when you were growing up, some of us at least, the first computer that you had? It was like this huge thing, and it was in the study. It certainly wasn't sitting on the kitchen counter like we do today. So these huge computers, and now technology has become just a part of our children's everyday life. How many students or children do you see who are always on their phone, right? They're walking down the street, they're on their phones. It's here. and it's normal, and it creates anxiety for them because we will say, as we should, these are things that you are going to do or not do with your phone. These are things you're going to do with your laptop and iPad. And there's an overuse and an overstimulation. So it's creating anxieties in children, really whether they have them or not. The fear of missing out, the old FOMO, that's very real for children, for kids. They're worried that they're missing something if they're not attached to their phones. We were worried if somebody didn't call us on the phone, the home phone, call us on the phone. They're worried if someone's not texting, if someone's not answering their Snapchat chat, if someone's not they're looking at their story and making comments. So that creates quite a bit of anxiety for them. The other one, the idea of the future and change. I talked a little bit about that with young people, young adults who are concerned about the future. It's creating anxiety for your junior in high school, for your grandchild who just got to their freshman year, who really wants to perform well. So are we going to be able to do that? Are we going to have the future that we want to have? So one thing that I found very helpful for me as a young person was when my mother-in-law reminded me that Jesus is what? The same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so we have to help our children understand that. Emmy Werner was a psychologist who did a study. It's a longitudinal study. She was a professor at CSU, and she had 1,000 families with children at risk. In the study, they were at risk because they were children of alcoholics. There were family issues, there were mental health issues. I've talked about some of that. But what we've just gone through, the anxieties that children have today, I dare say that every child's at risk in some way or another. So the study went on from when the children were little all the way through age 40. And she found that there were a percentage of children, a rather large percentage of adults, I should say, who were very successful despite having all of these risk factors or anxieties. And they became competent adults. So they were what we call resilient people, and they were resilient children. And there's a profile of resiliency that they had. So just for definition, resilience is the process of positive adaptation to adversity that arises through interactions between children and their environments. So they're going to be up here on the screen in just a minute. Social competence. So just quickly, how do we think about social competence? So it's good social skills, creating relationships, responsiveness, great communication skills, somebody who's able to identify and express their feelings, and then someone who has good problem-solving skills, good critical thinking, figuring out the problems, having tools to solve problems, knowing where to go for help if we don't know how to solve a problem. Autonomy refers to a person who's able to separate from stress in their lives, not become enmeshed in it, have a separate identity from something that's causing stress, like family life, someone who possesses self-worth. And then the last one I love, a sense of purpose and future. So hope deferred makes the heart sick. That's found in Proverbs. So a compelling future. So you think about Gary Smalley, remember the blessing where he talked about how we bestow upon a child that sense of a bright future. So these are common threads in resilient children. So just drilling down into protective factors, there are environmental factors, familiar factors, and within-person factors that are protective factors that help us be resilient. So the kinds of things that we can do, the characteristics. And I want to leave you just with, going to skip ahead a little bit because I see that I'm running out of time. But I want to leave you with one protective factor. So if we can get to the slide, these are just basic protective factors, basic needs, responsive caregiving. But this one, that one right back there where it said social connectedness. So the way God works things together, Lulu talked about that, about social connectedness. The picture up here is just of some little boys, but social connectedness is a very primary protective factor. Daddy Guy and Barb are two people from our church in Michigan where we went every Wednesday night before Wednesday night Bible study. They poured into my life, and they poured into the life of my daughter. And they were very important. The early church in Acts talks about coming together and breaking bread, sharing possessions. It's from that verse. And praising God together. And so one of my strategies for you as you think about your children, as you think about your grandchildren, is to make sure they're part of a group and make sure that you are a cookie person to your own children, but to other children as well. And a cookie person is someone who is nurturing others and nurturing children to help them be the very best that they can be. So I have some practical suggestions up there. And the last verse I want to leave you with is one that we all know that's super important to help our children be resilient. And that's from Deuteronomy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These words that I am giving to you today are to be upon your heart. Repeat them to your children. Be the cookie person who repeats them to your children. Cookie people are from Emmy Werner's study, by the way. Talk about them when you're in your house and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them be a symbol on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. The most precious part of our lives, our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, and our nephews. I know that's the joy of my life or my children, and I know it is for all of you. And so it's our prayer today that as we get out of the pandemic and we move along in life, that we remember that He's the one who is over all of us, and He's the one who can help us help our children walk along that path. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jayanne Roggenbaum. It was a blessing to have you with us today. Love you, friend. Girlfriends, you have the opportunity now for some more prizes. We are now in the stage where we've received wise counsel. So we're now going to be giving out some devotionals, books, and other wonderful items.
I'm not on. There I am. Hello. Shalom. Okay. Yes. So we have